What's up? Welcome to TSP TV. So glad you could join us for today's episode, Planet of the Mice. What's that all about? We will be getting into through the duration of this video and unraveling what could be a mystery or just a bunch of rambling nonsense. You can decide and leave me some comments in the section below what you think, but you may or may not be aware or may or not realize that this is a little bit of a parody and a satire on the most popular and famous movie franchise, Planet of the Apes. Not only was it a movie franchise, it also had a TV spin-off series, and it also had comic books and cartoons, as well as a host of other merchandise. And it's also a movie franchise that I'm particularly fond of, or was a fan of growing up, and have a little bit of knowledge about. So what's Planet of the Apes got to do with mice exactly? As I said, we will be unraveling this mystery, and it is a little bit of a rabbit hole that I have gone down today as a result of trying to do a little bit of research on another video. If you're not aware, I did have my Soylent Green Society. Are we living in a Soylent Green Society predictive programming video? Pick up a copyright strike and has now been removed or was unable to be played on YouTube. And those of you who do know, Soylent Green is a movie that I can't emphasize enough how programmatic, how prophetic this is. Possibly one of the most prophetic pieces of fiction in comparison to 1984 that I could possibly give you as an example. And you know, you kind of look around us today, very, very dystopian scenes. But Soylent Green is, as I said, a movie and something I've mentioned many, many times before. And I am working on a little bit of a Soylent Green Society reboot, seeing as YouTube keeps censoring it. And there must be a reason when they censor it that you may or may not be hitting a little close to the mark. But Soylent Green, that's a video that you should be aware of. Hopefully you've caught my previous videos that are now no longer available to view on this channel, but some of you have been following for a while may or may not recall I did have a number of Soylent Green related videos on this channel. But Soylent Green, as I said, isn't today's topic. We are talking about the Planet of the Mice, and how the Planet of the Mice comes about exactly is from, as I said, Planet of the Apes. And as we did mention before, we're going to give you a little bit of a familiarization. Now, there are two versions of Planet of the Apes. Actually, there's probably more than two versions. There was the Tim Burton's Marky Mark reboot in the early 2000s, as well as the more recent movies that kind of are a continuation of the original Arthur P. Jacobs movie version, starring, of course, the loinclothed Charlton Heston and Roddy McDowall as the beloved chimpanzee Cornelius. And Charlton Heston played the astronaut Taylor, and him and a bunch of fellow astronauts went on an expedition in a spacecraft and somehow went through a wormhole and ended up in the future, 700 years into the future, and managed to land on the planet Earth, where they were shocked to discover apes ruled the roost. But there is another version which the movie was based on, that was written by Pierre Boulet, who also wrote Bridge Over the River Kwai, starring Alec Guinness, classic movie. But the movie and the book, the original source, are very, very different. In Pierre Boulet's version, the apes lived in a society very, very, very much like today, as opposed to the sort of kind of desolate, apocalyptic, barren wasteland that the apes in the Arthur P. Jacobs version exist in. But nonetheless, the apes do possess what is human-like behavior. They talk, they have social activities, they have jobs, they have councils, they have kind of religion, they have all sorts of things. And within the Pierre Boulet version, it was much, much more reminiscent of the world that we know. The apes drove cars, they used to go and play golf, they had airliners, planes, helicopters, all the things humans had, but apes, and that was why it was a Planet of the Apes. Very interesting book, you should read it because it's got a double twist to it. Won't spoil that. But the movie version, Planet of the Apes, obviously we will concentrate a little bit more on, because that is more familiar to most people. And as we know, the iconic scene at the end with Charlton Heston in a loincloth banging the ground, "Damn you all to hell, you maniacs!" you did it to yourself, you blew yourself up. Once he discovers it is in fact Earth that is now being overrun by apes, and at one point in his history, humanity did in fact carry out a nuclear apocalypse and wiped out the majority of humanity. And there are two kinds of humans that kind of emerged from the survivors in the aftermath of the war in Planet of the Apes. But the apes, again, as we said, had some very, very, very human-like behavior, and there's also some concerns or issues or discussions for those who are Darwinists and believe in evolution, that if man once evolved from what was a primitive form of ape, then are the apes constantly in, if evolution is evolving, are the apes of today's society evolving, and one day, maybe in the future, will they be as smart as humans and be able to drive cars, play golf, shoot hoops, and things like this? And, there are already apes that can do sign language, and some apes that can paint, and some apes that can memorize buttons and press things. They've even sent fucking apes to space, goddamn you. So it's not too astronomical to think that possibly, maybe, in a not so distant future, apes might become almost equally as intelligent as humans. But anyway, back to the mice. So I was doing a little bit of research looking into my Soylent Green reboot, which of course has another memorable cinematic end scene starring Charlton Heston, very similar to the ending of Planet of the Apes, where he discovers that Soylent Green is in fact people. So as I said, I was going to do a little bit of a reboot on the Soylent Green Society, and I was looking into fetal tissue matter and the HEK293 and how they use it in not only vaccines and cosmetics, but foodstuffs. And when I did come across this one particular article that we are going to look at very, very, very shortly, I come across something that didn't really sort of make much sense at the time, but kind of sparked something, and we will discover this at the minute. But it did spark a little bit of thought. Wait, what, did I read that right? Let me go back. And it did lead to a little bit more research. But anyway, we do got a couple of articles to bring you about the Planet of the Mice and what they are doing with mice and using embryonic tissue cells in labs and experimentation and stuff that is getting government funding. But anyway, Planet of the Apes, hopefully you got a little bit of knowledge. The apes, they kind of had human-like behavior, and within the movie, somehow in humans' existence, cats and dogs become extinct, and humans started to take simians as pets, and these pets then, all these ape pets then become almost butlers and servants, and eventually they did kind of have a little bit of an uprising and overpower humanity and become the dominant species on the planet. Is that going to happen to humanity in the Earth in the future? Who knows? Goodness gracious, it's 2020. Anything is possible. But I don't expect apes to be starting riding around on horseback, casting nets, shooting rifles, and rounding up mute humans for sport, leisure, and diet. But we are going to be looking at a little bit now as to some of this stuff that I found about mice and this human embryonic tissue, some research and projects that they've got going on, and as to what exactly they're doing with this. We will probably wrap it up at the end of this video. Sorry, I'm getting used to talking to myself and being on camera, something I'm not exactly 100% used to yet, and that is part of the kind of tinkering and constant trying to improve. If I'm not looking at my face as an improvement to my videos or not, or as opposed to looking at the hands, let me know. But anyway, we are trying to do a little bit of changing up here at TSP TV, and it's a little bit sort of when you get used to doing one way, you got muscle memory, and this is still a little bit uncomfortable for me. Maybe or not, we will get used to it in time. But anyway, guys, I do said we got a couple of articles to look at about the Planet of the Mice, and we'll see you back in the studio after we've looked at the articles to wrap this up. So here is the first of those articles that I mentioned, and this is in regard to fetal tissue research, which was something I was looking into my Soylent Green reboot for some information for it. But this was the first article that drew my attention to this mice in regards to the fetal tissue research, and something you should notice there, I don't know if you can see, June 6, 2019, this was when this article was published. 6-6, for those of you familiar with gematria, 6-6 would be FF, false flag. Something of interest. Was that a coincidence, or did they just choose specifically to release this on June the 6th because it is indeed a false flag? I don't know. But anyway, it's got stuff about vaccines and something about the Trump administration. We're not going to get too much into this, but let's just read the first article. The Trump administration announced yesterday that it was discontinuing all research at the National Institutes of Health, NIH, involving the use of human fetal tissue obtained from elective abortions. Elective abortions are something you should probably check out. Very interesting. As to what elective abortions are, but it also chose not to renew a long-running contract with the University of California, San Francisco, which expired yesterday, to provide funding for such research being conducted at the university. In a statement provided to Health and published online, UCSF, University of California, San Francisco, Chancellor Sam Hagwood said that the university strongly opposes the administration's decision to discontinue fetal tissue research at the NIH. The efforts by the administration to impede this work will undermine scientific discovery and the ability to find effective treatments for serious life-threatening disease. Now remember, this was a year before the COVID-19 scammed pandemic broke out and locked us all down. So they were very disappointed, as I can imagine anybody would be, to lose some government funding. But it cuts the funding, and it's got some stuff and issues raised with anti-abortion rights and pro-choice and all this kind of stuff off the bat. But what they're trying to say is why is it so important to modern medicine? Here are the facts the doctors and the scientists want you to know. Here's where it's interesting, guys. As early as the 1930s, scientists discovered that cells and tissues from human fetuses and embryos could be useful for medical studies. Now, something you need to realize here, that in the 1930s, the scientists they are referring to, and they were indeed scientists, however, they were Nazi scientists. Yes, they were National Socialist scientists, in that their test subjects were the people of Jewish descent that were being held captive against their will in the death camps, in some Nazi experimentation into human. It is just shocking beyond imagination, but something they did come up with as a product of Auschwitz, into utilizing the corpses, was to make light shades from the skin. But anyway, that is the scientists that they were referring to, that were conducting this skills and research and scientific experimentation on human fetuses in embryos, because they were pulling the fetuses and the embryos from the wombs of Jewish women who were expecting. There was nothing wholesome or for the good of humanity here, or maybe good of the humanity if you were part of the superior race. But anyway, those were the studies that were being carried out at the death camps like Auschwitz and Dachau. But because fetal cells are still often undifferentiated, which means they haven't developed into certain types of cells like nerve or blood cells, they can be used broadly in many different fields, and they're still kind of alive, I guess, and this is where the elective abortions come from. Women share their abortion stories in the wake of You Know Me. I think that's a related article. this is what they're saying. This is where the mice come into. So researchers use the fetal tissue to produce cell cultures, also called cell lines, which can be maintained in a laboratory environment for very long periods of time, in some cases indefinitely. And this is kind of how they're looking into this fetus tissue cell research into kind of making factory grown meat. But it can be kept for a period of time indefinitely, and this was from a 2015 report from the Congressional Research Service. Cultured cells mimic many of the properties that they have in a living body, and therefore can be used as a model for researchers studying basic biological processes. This is the interesting part. So in some cases, researchers perform experiments on fetal tissue itself to study potential causes of birth defects. For example, that's just one example of what they're studying its potential use for. In others, they inject fetal cells into mice to make their bodies and immune system behave more human. And as I said, I read that at a glance, didn't really sink in, and I'm like, wait, did I read that right? They inject them into mice to make them more human. In the 1950s, the NIH has supported this research, according to the congressional report. Something in the 1950s you need to be aware of. Operation P Paperclip, folks. This is when the Allied forces cherry-picked the surviving Nazi war criminal scientists that had been in the 1930s and 1940s carrying out this horrific, inhumane experimentation on living subjects, including embryos and fetuses, as well as men, women, and children at the death camps. But in the 1950s, Operation Paperclip pardoned these Nazi war criminals as long as they were willing to work for the Allies. And since the 1950s, they've been spending millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars on research into fetal tissues. But supporters disagree, or there are issues. But back to the injecting the human fetal cells into mice to make their bodies and immune systems behave more human. What is the point of this? Why do they want mice to behave more human? Are they trying to breed some kind of human mice hybrid? Are they trying to get mice to be more understanding to human, or is it purely for research purposes? And if mice have more human immune systems, then maybe they will be a better test subject for future medicines and vaccines, and maybe they might reciprocate to those treatments a little bit better if they are more humane, or they behave more human-like, for example. Or are the mice, the guinea pig, the lab rats, so to speak, quite literally the lab rats that are being tested, and maybe once the mice have become more human-like, they might start injecting other creatures, like apes, for example. But anyway, we're not going to go any further into this article. It was that one little paragraph that drew my attention to this, and we are going to be looking at another article right now. So here we are with the second article, and this is where it gets a little bit scary and disturbing. This is from the Judicial Watch, and this was printed on June the 20th, 2020. 2020, lots of 20s and 20s and 20s there, but this was very, very recently, and as you read quite correctly, Judicial Watch obtains records showing the FDA paid for fresh and never frozen human fetal parts for use in humanized mice creation. Yeah, read that again, guys, and just let that sink in and how disturbing that sounds. So the FDA, the Food and Drugs Administration, are purchasing fresh, never frozen fetal parts so that they can humanize mice. Something very, very, very important about these humanized mice, wouldn't you think, if they're going to the extent of purchasing fresh
human fetal parts, not frozen. Very, 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 very sinister goings on, I can only imagine. But Washington, D.C., a judicial watch announced today it received 165 pages of records from the Food and Drug Administration showing that the FDA between 2012 and 2018 entered into 8 contracts worth 96.3 that much money, 96,370,000 with Advanced Bioscience Resources to acquire. So this Advanced Bioscience Resources are the contract that the FDA had with to acquire fresh and never frozen fetal tissue from first and second trimester aborted fetuses for use in creating humanized mice for ongoing research. Again, second trimester babies and first trimester babies is quite a big difference there, and any of you mothers out there will probably tell you by the time it's in its second trimester, it is starting to be a lot more human-like than just a little kind of thing, a shrimp or squid type structure. But anyway, ABR is a non-profit, which is in itself alarming because there's a lot of corruption and profit to be made from the non-profit. I bet you your bottom dollar that the CEO of ABR is sitting on some fat stacks of non-profit profits and living quite the lifestyle, maybe injecting fresh fetal matter into his veins directly from the source, perhaps. But anyway, that's speculative and conjecture. But anyway, House and Senate committees investigating whether Planned Parenthood or other entity was illegally profiting from the handling of fetal tissues. And this is kind of your Soylent Green society here, waste not, want not. In Soylent Green, the euthanized bodies of humans that have got fed up living in the sad existence that they are forced to endure each and every day are then sent off to a food factory where they are processed into Soylent Green wafers that are then distributed to the starving massives every Tuesday. So, you know, there's always profit to be made. One man's trash is another man's treasure, as we've said before on this channel. So our Planned Parenthood not only kind of profiting off the, the abortion process itself, but they also double profiting on the waste from the abortion process. But anyway, federal law regulates the purchase and the acceptance of human fetal tissue for research purposes. It is unlawful to knowingly transfer fetal tissue for profit. And this is where your non-profit organizations come into it, because any profits that they can or do make have to be redispersed within the organization, usually on the salary of the CEO. So the Judicial Watch filed the lawsuit in the United States District Court for the District of Columbia. Judicial Watch versus the U.S. Department of Health and Humane Services, and that's the number of the court filing there after HHS failed to respond adequately to a September 28, 2018 FOIA request seeking all contracts in FO Freedom of Information Act is the acronym. All contracts and related documentation between the FDA and Advanced Biosciences Resources for the provision of human fetal tissue to be used in humanized mice research. All records reflecting the disbursement of funds to ABR for provision of human fetal tissue to be used in humanized mice research. All guidelines and procedural documents provided to ABR by the FDA relating to the acquisition and extraction of human fetal tissues for its provision to the FDA for the humanized mice research. All communications between the FDA officials and employees and representatives of ABR related to the provision by the ABR to the FDA of human fetal tissues for the purposes of humanized mice research. So again, they don't really go into say exactly what these humanized mice are being researched for. Maybe you might have to look down that rabbit hole a little bit further to find out exactly. But the new production of records shows a June 28th, 2017 email exchange with the subject line FDRRFQ, request for quotation, between a redacted FDA contract specialist and an ABR official named Miss Larton, in which the FDA official tells the ABR official, I am tasked with the purchase of tissues suitable for HM humanized mice research. I would like to request a quote. Please review the statement of work and quote your pricings as outlined. She then includes a table for 16 human fetal tissues, liver, 16 human fetal tissues, thymus, 16 HIV, Hep A, Hep A, Hep C tests, and shipping and delivery. The Division of Applied Regulatory Science, DARS, is conducting a research program to evaluate the usefulness of humanized mice for regulatory purposes. The humanized mice are created by surgical implantation of human tissue into mice that have multiple genetic mutations that block the development of the immune system at the very, very early stage. So these are lab rats, literally. But what are they doing? What are the genetic mutations? What is trying to block the development of mouse immune systems? And are they trying to use this? If they can block mouse immune systems, can they block human immune systems? Depopulation comes to mind. What are these test rats writing? Why do they need human fetal tissue in order to carry out this? And why do they need the more human? Because if they have a more human immune system, then maybe they might be able to genetically mutate that human immune system to not work so well. See what I'm saying, guys? Thoughts, comments, opinions would be greatly appreciated. Comments below. Use it. So anyway, development that would block development of the mouse immune system at the very early stage. The absence of the mouse immune system allows the human tissues to grow and develop into functional human tissues. As part of this process, DARS needs to repeatedly acquire the proper type of tissues in order for the humanization to proceed correctly. We need to attain fetal tissue with a specific set of specialized characteristics. Kind of cherry picking, I guess. Among the specific characteristics that the tissue be aged range 16 to 24 weeks. Now, I think it's 12 weeks is usually the legal abortion cutoff time. Please correct me if I'm wrong there. So anything after 16 or 24, I don't think you would actually be able to go to an abortion clinic and get your fetus aborted at that point in time. And the tissues here must be fresh and never frozen. So they're going to have to be kind of within close distance and sort of literally rip the tissue out of the fetus while it's still kind of warm, so to speak. And they attach the quote. And there's another email thread from June 12, 2017 related to a contract closeout of $24,500. Again, between the FDA and these advanced bioscience resource people in a project titled Human Tissue. An FDA official emails an ABR official asking to confirm all the items, services requested under this order were delivered and all payments processed, so that I may close out this contract. 15 million, indicate funds in the amount of 15 million to be de-obligated as a result of this closeout. A screenshot of a database print indicates a match amounted of $9,410. The difference between the matched amount and the correct value is sorry, it's not 15 million, it's 15,090. So anyway, this is all the stuff that they're looking into in research is part of their lawsuit into the FDA, this this bioscience research corporation, and their carryings on and their contracts that are seeing one provide the other with fresh, not frozen, human fetal matter. As we are not selling items, we do not have prices. We assesses fees for our service. So that's what I'm saying. They don't sell it, but you can pay us for our trouble and we'll give you it for free. Legality, grey areas, stuff like this, reduce, plausible deniability, yada yada, whoopie woo, ray tay tay, big corporation, in particular non-profits, will do an awful lot to keep themselves operating within legalities. Whether or not those legalities are moral or not is questionable. But anyway, it goes on and on and on about these articles and emails and stuff, so we won't read every single one there, but I just found it a little bit alarming and concerning that the FDA is paying such substantial amounts of dollars to independent non-profit organizations to obtain human fetal parts so that they can use them in humanized mice research. And as I said, are they trying to humanize the mice so that they behave more human? Are they going to genetically mutate them into some kind of super mice? Are the super mice going to be, riding around on horses with nets rounding up humans that have had their immune systems mutated genetically as a result of this research? It's all very alarming. It did kind of, as I said, ring some disturbing thoughts to me as to where we're going. But as I said, is these rats, or these mice in particular, these humanized mice, are they just the beginning of the experimentation? Once they've got the mice down, dusted, and the recipe perfected, will they then take this research towards and put it in other animals? For example, apes, that then will become more humanized, perhaps, and be able to carry out duties as servants. And are they sort of planting the seeds for Planet of the Apes to happen? This almost could have been a fiction decoded episode for Planet of the Apes. If you would like to see a fiction decoded episode on Planet of the Apes, please let me know in the comments below. But you can find for yourself, if you want to research any more into this, you should be able to put what you need into a search bar based on what you have read and seen in this episode to further your own personal research into humanized mice. So let's step back to the Thrift Store studio to wrap this up, say our goodbyes, and summarize what we've thought and heard and seen so far.
So there you have it, guys. Those were the articles of interest, or at least I thought they were interesting. Let me know if you or not thought they were interesting. With regards to humanized mice and the fact that the FDA needs fresh, never frozen human embryonic tissue cells in order to carry out this very, very important humanized mice research. And what exactly the humanized mice are needed for, we didn't exactly unravel that hidden disturbing mystery, but nonetheless there is a lot of money being spent on this. They do seem to be an importance for the FDA, at least, to acquire fresh, never frozen human embryonic cells, including kidneys and livers, and also babies that are diseased. Now, maybe some of these fetuses that they are obtaining these cells and organs from may have died in the womb or had complications and stuff, but how on earth are they obtaining fetal cells from 16 to 24-year-old embryos, 24 weeks, sorry about that, 24-week-year-old embryos for their research? One can only wonder. And non-profit organizations, something you should possibly look into. Maybe we will go into a little bit of profit non-profit research and looking into the corruption in one of the live shows at some point. But non-profit organizations, just like the Red Cross, run by the Rothschild, they're often used for a multitude of things: money laundering, profiteering, racketeering, tax breaks, all sorts of things will fall under the non-profit that you will be able to get away with if you are the CEO of it. But as I said, somebody is profiting, somebody is spending an awful lot of money, and the FDA seem to be very adamant that they need their funding back from the government in order to continue this research, and a lawsuit has been raised because the FDA are reluctant to provide documentation, information, and standard operating procedures into how exactly this contract between them and the bio research science company, or the bioscience research company, or whatever they were called, how they carry out and conduct their business, how they're obtaining the fetal parts, how they're being paid for the how the transaction and all this is going on. Are they being paid for it? Are they being paid for? Aren't they being paid for it? Are they donating it? Is one back scratching the other? But the more disturbing fact is the fact that they are using human embryonic tissues in this experimentation. Now, we will be looking a little bit more into human fetal tissue, hopefully in the Soylent Green reboot, which I have mentioned a few times in this episode, as well as Planet of the Apes. So as I've already mentioned, if you do want to see a Planet of the Apes fiction decoded episode, as well as a Soylent Green fiction decoded episode, which you're going to probably see at some point in a not so distant future anyway, whether you want to or not, let me know. But give me some hints and tips if there are any sort of movies or TV shows or books that you have found interesting or prophetic, and we will look into them. But that concludes this particular episode on Planet of the Mice. And are they humanizing mice for sinister draconian purposes, or is it just purely innocent? They just want to keep us safe and putting fresh human tissues into mice with mutated immune systems is the only way that humanity can be kept safe. So let me know what you think, guys, if you enjoyed this video or not, or if you have any thoughts and opinions on what we looked at in today's episode. Would gladly and appreciated welcomed any impact and feedback you may wish to contribute. But that's it, guys. We are going to wrap it up. We are going to say goodbye. So long, auf Wiedersehen, adieu. We will see you in another one, all being well, fingers crossed, unless you choose to unsubscribe and not watch me again. It does happen from time to time, either by human or algorithmic behavior. I lose views and subscribers on a daily basis. But anyway, those of you that did choose to watch, thank you very much for your company and patience for watching today. This is, by now, a shit video production. I'm the Thrift Store Prepper. This is TSP TV. You never know exactly what you are in store when you open the door to the thrift store. Be excellent to each other, guys, and until next time, keep it thrifty. This is a shit video production. This was TSP TV.